cloud. Okay, we're now recording, and I just want to welcome you all to this, the 4th month of Create Our Future Together. And it's wonderful to have people who've been here before, some right from the beginning, and also newcomers. So I invite welcome to Kate and Angela, because you and Brian, at the moment, you've not ever been before, but all of you have been sometime before. Okay, and there are some more coming in. And what I thought I would just do to begin with is set your thought processes on the future. And I have got some images just to share to give us some energy about this. But the idea of Create Our Future Together, with the subtitle Create Our Future Now, is almost drawing the future into the now. And here's another newcomer, Kate. Welcome. So, hi Kate, we're just getting started. So my goal and my idea with everything that I do is about flowing forward. What is the future? Yes, we need to recognize that the past has brought us to today, but in the present, dealing with life and the experiences we have, I want to look at the future and explore what it is the future might be if we use our imagination, and to work that scenario out so we can reverse engineer from that desired future to now. So that's the my basic proposition or whatever it is. And the goal for today was to look at the idea of simplicity versus complexity and how the two things come together. One of the things I thought I would do is to share a few images while we wait for everybody to come. So I want you just to relax and to think about simplicity in your life, think about complexity in your life, but also in the world. Okay, so very simply, just some images, and then we'll be able to all get our voices heard as everybody else comes in. Okay. Okay. So just focus for a minute on creating our future together. I want to think about what your dream is out there. What is the future? What is your ideal? And our goal is to use this sentence, bringing knowledge, experience, and imagination together. It's one of the mantras of entrepreneurology that I discussed before, but for those of you new to it, is you know lots of things, you've got lots of knowledge. You're all of different ages, but you've had experiences. You've got your knowledge, you might have learned that at school, but we're more interested in what have you learned in your life. And that comes when you experience it, and you validate the experience in your own mind, and you validate it by what other people tell you as well. Well, I want you to think about the experiences that we're having now collectively as well, because obviously COVID and the pandemic, the smoking fires across the west coast of America, the riots in our streets, the scaredness that we might have, and excitedness. So how can we use our imagination to bring something else which we don't actually know yet? And that's, I suppose, what I've always said to my children, it's the scary, exciting bit of life. And maybe that's the magical bit of life. So my experience is simplicity, and I just pulled this picture off to give us an energy about it. Here it says, and you can disagree with this when we get into the conversation, simplicity is a key to avoiding complication. Part of the definition of simplicity is not complex or complicated, it's sincere. And what I thought about when I thought about simplicity, it's almost, it's radial to me. It's simplicity radiates when you're calm. That element of that sea there, it's very flat. I don't know whether any of you are sailors, but I've been on a very rough sea, and you can watch the sea go from calm to rough, and you're dealing with different energies. So simplicity to me is almost, in many ways, it's flat simplicity. It's straight line, but it's rippling. It's a light that shines right out as far as we can go. And when I thought about simplicity, I thought it's about the fact that we're all human beings, and in simple terms, we all breathe the same air, even though it might be smoky in California and Seattle. But it's about, maybe it's easy to be in simplicity, and I want to know your thoughts. But complexity, and I love this picture, because this is to me what complexity is about for me at the moment. There's so much stuff. There's so many elements that are moving parts coming together. There's so much out on media. There's so much noise and so much news, so much. But we live in a complex world, and even nature is complex in its elements. So how can we manage that as we change it? Because what I think is that we don't want to stay in the old world too much. We want to bridge towards a new world. And it's all about this. It's about developing a new ecosystem. It's something that many of us have talked about individually. We have conversations about global Renaissance society, which Knut will talk about. Georgina and I talk a lot about new ways. All of you have talked to me about how do we create the new, and how do we create an ecosystem which we see in nature. And I just want to introduce this because I don't know whether any of you have come across the idea of spiral dynamics, that there is an energy rising, and I would suspect that all of us here are moving up towards this yellow and turquoise level of consciousness in the world, that we value human relations, we value synergy, we want a global vision, but not everybody's there. And so the complexity that many people experience at a low level of society, and there's evidence out there that 85% of the world is more disengaged from the possibility of a bright future and more engaged in the complexity of whatever we like to call it, the craziness that's going on. So my thought was, in terms of rising into this higher consciousness, what elements do we want to hold on to? What do we want to bridge, and what do we want to find in the future? Okay, so remembering that, as I stop the share, what I want to just remind us of is that magical conversations have 3 very simple rules. So the first, and this is to be a magical conversation, the first is no judgment. So the second is no anger, and the third is no coercion. So it's not necessarily our goal in this session to work out exactly what's going to happen in the future, but it's to discuss and explore how we manage the simplicity and complexity of life. Are we okay with that? Yes? Good, excellent. So in looking at that, I want to invite you to share with me what you think, how do you think simplicity and complexity become companions, I suppose, and how do we experience what I'm going to say is life at work? So one of my passions is to build communities in the workplace and in society where we understand that life, i.e. emotion and spiritual quality, come into what we do on a commercial and practical basis. So I'm going to open up the floor and just welcome. Nadia has joined us. Hi there, Nadia. And Lloyd, I think you're there. Are you, Lloyd? We're not sure. I can see you on the screen, Lloyd, but anyway.
Yeah, sorry, my mic was on mute. I'm here.
Oh, okay, that's right. Because I couldn't see you, and I could only see a name. But welcome, Lloyd. So, if we would, who would like to start? Maybe I'm going to go to my dear friend Georgina, because we love to talk about the future. So maybe get a bite size of how simplicity and complexity come together if we're going to bridge to the future.
I think that, I mean, the current project that I'm working on at the moment is very, very complicated because there's so many different layers and aspects and, you know, scenarios that need to be encapsulated in a very simple form that, you know, other people understand. And I think that it's crystallizing the common elements to each of those different layers and elements, because if there's a common theme that actually acts as an umbrella, but a common thread that runs through them all, then it makes it a lot easier to create a skeletal framework that other people can relate to. Because as much as, you know, I understand the spaghetti junction that goes on inside my head when I present it to anybody in its raw natural form, that you can absolutely guarantee that nobody understands what the hell I'm on about, what planet I'm on. So, you know, creating a sense of value from the core values of the project, the ethos, and the why you're actually doing something, kind of focuses everything else in a particular direction and creates a unity in your voice, in the way that you express it and how you project your ambitions out into the wider world. And that's certainly where I'm at the moment. And sometimes it's, you know, particularly when I'm trying to juggle all these different concepts that are pinging and popping away in my brain, I sit very still, I breathe into the moment, I allow the 3 S's, silence, spaciousness, and stillness, to prevail, and allow the natural things to emerge that, you know, that are inherent within the vision and the project that I'm working on.
That's fantastic. And I love the messages there around taking the complexity and ensuring that people understand the clear messages. I think that's something that I struggle with sometimes, because to me, I see it so clearly. And then you realize that, for instance, you all know that I work with my gender dynamics map, and I sometimes think I've shared it with somebody many times, and they'll still say to me, oh, I don't really understand that. So that's the if you like, that's the trick. I think there's so much noise out there in messages that confuse people. So I'm going to ask Scott now, because he's our late night interrupter from Melbourne. Tell us what you think about that, Scott.
Yeah, look, I love it. You know, I'm just going to refer back to, I used to be a high-end swimming pool builder, and we built some amazing swimming pools. Simplicity is always harder to build than complex jobs, because you have to get everything in exact alignment. So when I'll never forget one swimming pool we built, it was just seamless completely. So all water fell off every edge. As you walk down the stairs out to the yard, there's a triangular spa, which led out to a wet edge pool all the way around, which led into the marina out over the water. To look at that swimming pool, it was just so simple. You walk in, you see the point of the triangle, so naturally the eye goes with that, and then heads out over to the water. Seamless, simplicity. But it was the most complex job I've ever built. So I'm finding at the moment, inside where I'm at in Melbourne, I've chosen to actually do less to support my family. It's a much simpler way to live at the minute, but it's actually more complex to be able to be accepted to do that. I've had to choose to really watch the money that I spend. I've got a wife who's like, she doesn't quite understand that time for me and the emotional stability of our family is more important than the money, because society is a money-driven opportunity at the moment, whereas I run on emotions. So the simplistic lifestyle is pretty confusing for a lot of people at the moment. Why aren't you hammering business? Now's the time to go. Now's the time to go. Is it? I'm a lot happier. I'm smiling. So.
That's great. Brian, I can see you. Brian, tell me what you were thinking. I saw you connecting with that very
Yeah,
strongly.
this theme that Scott hit of simplicity hiding complexity or necessitating almost complexity. I reflected on, there's an ancient prayer that gets said on the Shabbat celebration, the Sabbath celebrations in the Jewish faith, just sort of thanking God for the complexity of this body that works, right? We have these things that just kind of generally work, and this particular prayer acknowledges the sort of deep complexity of it all. There's lots of things that have to go right in order for us just to get out of bed in the morning. And, you know, the prayer sounds silly to modern ears. It talks about the openings and closings, and if one should do what it wasn't supposed to do at the wrong moment, it's you know, laughable and something we use to sort of connect the kids to this ancient faith. But it's true that there's a lot going on, and as much as we understand right now inside of our own bodies, we face the world and it's fairly simple. There you are. The same is true of any ecosystem. I particularly liked your thought on the ecosystem, Pauline, with the picture of the butterfly there. A working forest or agricultural or seaside ecosystem has so much going on, but we're trained to see the forest, if you will, and not the trees. And of course, it's not just the trees, it's the underbrush, it's the overstory, there's a lot going on with these trophic layers. And as soon as you start to look at anything that appears simple, it gets more complicated, right down to what Georgina was talking about with how hard is it just to relax and slough things off. Well, you've got to have your 3 S's to remember. You've got to, you know, be still, and you've got to, it takes concentration to simplify. And that's the theme that was coming together for me there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I want to go to another newcomer, Kate, in UK. What's your thoughts on what we're hearing?
Well, many thoughts, Pauline. I think initially going back to what Brian was sharing, talking about concentration reminded me of the yang way of being, which is effortful. So be that yoga, whichever one's, you know, but it's about, you know, concentration in order to get somewhere. And then on the inside, you have meditation, which is, you know, allowing and, you know, connecting into a deeper level. And then somewhere it's the middle way, which is contemplation, which is actually, in some respects, a bit of both. And you can do it at any time. You come to show up in a mindful way. And so I think that was one thought I had, which I'll leave you with. And then the second, as you know, Pauline, I work with colour. And I thought, I wasn't really sure what I was coming to. I was coming because it was you, and I really love your energy. And you said you're talking about the future. And I'm about to start another program on Friday with these lovely platinum Gaias. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's platinum with the gold shot through the top. And platinum is all about the future. And the future in many respects is about going to the void state, because we're all on our journey back home. So all this talk about money and stuff, but that's all very third dimensional. Doesn't mean that it doesn't impact on us, but if that's what we're focused on, we're basically in that sort of, if you look at the tree of life, the lower 5th dimension, and we're never going to get anywhere. And really, we're asked to remember who we are.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Kate, you're new to our group. Kate, I met on LinkedIn, and we've been talking about my work and writing, but what's your thought about this simplicity and complexity? How do we manage it?
Well, of course, I love the word ecosystem when it comes to that. What we tend to try to do is to take everything complex and share it with others. And when we do that, they probably aren't going to understand, because we've got a lot more going on in our brains than we can communicate clearly. And it's a complex job to achieve simplicity. It's not going to happen easily. It's going to happen through effort to take things down. And in an ecosystem, the moose doesn't worry about the tree or the butterfly or anything else. The moose has a simple set of jobs. Just like each one of us bring a simple outcome that we want from our years here on the earth, and communicating that well in a simple way with the intelligence level of this group, it's not going to happen easily. So that's what I do for people, is I help them reduce their complex level of knowledge into something that's digestible to their future audience.
And so it's very interesting, you know, to be simple, to have simplicity, we need to be complex about it. I think it's a lovely statement, I know. And it also
not easy.
Yeah, it reflects on our personality. Some people are more able to focus on one thing. I get really annoyed with myself because I'm always doing 10 things at once, but that's my nature. So it's also being true to your nature, isn't it?
Well, people like you, it's even harder to make it simple. Because if you think about a lot of things all the time, and you can have 3 topics going on in your mind at any given time, then reducing it down to a simple message and a simple communication, first you got to figure out who you're talking to, because it's going to be different from one person to the other. And a lot of other things have to be done. It's hard.
Yes. And I think there's because there's a lot being written now about we need love in the workplace, we need love in our lives, we need that. And then I think, well, maybe people don't always understand what their version of love is. So
I had a minister that really got sideways, I'll put it that way, when I mentioned that love is the only truth. And he defined love in a very different way than I do. I'll just put it that way.
Well, I want to gather in Angela, because Angela is also new to this group, and we met only the other day, and sparks flew, didn't they, when we met Angela? We connected, and this is for me one of the, with all of you, I have, Georgina's the person I've known longest here, but even we only met, 5 years ago. We've all met very recently, and what we do is we click, don't we, with something about, maybe it's one thing that happens. But Angela, what's your thought coming in from California, but you also have a wonderful Italian background as well?
I do. I was born and raised there. So what I'm enjoying Knut's background. It really reminds me of my homeland.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, right? Is that Tuscany?
Yeah, it is. Tuscany, yeah, right.
Yeah, beautiful. I always try to embrace the paradoxes and the polarities. This is for me very much the paradox of life, where of course we all understand that both are there and have to be there, and it's never going to be one over the other, or this is my preferred choice versus the other, is really understanding what are the upsides of simplicity, but there are some downsides of simplicity. If we were to make a metaphor with a book, it's great to have down to one single line, but the concept of the book is complexity, is the lines and the paragraphs and all the pages together. And so, and the same thing on the other end, on the other pole of this complexity, there are some upsides of complexity. And so we can only come to an agreement where we embrace, we really bring this wholeness together of understanding all of it, the upsides and downsides. And yeah, so that's my take on this. Someone, I think, just to conclude my thought, I think it was Georgina that was talking about how to bridge is through the values, through the why. So yeah, it really connects to that.
I think so too. There's something around how do we connect the two, simplicity and complexity? Is it our values, our personalities, whatever it is? But I love that there's ups and downs on all of it, and it's situational, and it's how we react to things at the moment. And so, Knut, what are you going to share with us from?
There are a lot of thoughts here.
Tuscany.
It's just, inspiring. For me, because I am about to create a global ecosystem. And how to create a global ecosystem in a simple way when people don't understand simplicity. Because if you are too simple, when you try to explain it, and as Pauline mentioned, if you try to explain something in a simple way and people don't understand the complexity behind the conclusion, the simple conclusion, then we have a communication problem. But for me as well, we take the body as a metaphor here, then it's a very complex ecosystem, So for me, it's also about relationships and communication. It flows, because as long as we meet a blocking or a hindrance, then we will feel the complexity. But when I switch on the light, I don't think through all the electricity and all the cables and how everything was led to me. I just pushed the button. That is simplicity. But if we are, or when we now are in a big shift, in a global shift, then we have the problem, because simplicity is often indifference. People want it to have it simple. They don't want the challenge in order to understand the complexity. And for me, this is why also, sometimes I joke with as well, but when we talk about the feminine and masculine, and as a man, I often feel that the women are very complex. I don't understand them. But then the challenge then in our context is to listen into the creative chaos, because creativity is always open. It's infinite potential. So when we have that insight and that approach, then we open up and we perceive. So this has a lot to do with perception. Where are we in our own process? Do we understand nature? How do we treat nature these days? It's obvious that people, they relate very simple when they go in nature. But I see people jogging around and they don't experience anything at all. They're running, jogging. It's very simple. But as you mentioned in the book, I totally agree on that, because if you always should just learn the alphabet, we count the alphabet, but we don't use the alphabet in order to create something new. So it is also then how to understand and discover new patterns in chaos. That is creativity. And that is what we need, at least now. So simplicity and complexity is neither negative or positive. It's just as it is.
So it's that wonderful thing, and one of the things that they would say that you reference to feminine and maybe females being more complex is that we're always thinking about and, whereas the world has been created in a very either-or way. It's either this or it's that. You either make money or you go out of business. It's not about people, but now it's about people. So that's why it's different. So, Rebecca, I can see you nodding up there on top of my screen. What's your thoughts? How do we create simplicity in a complex world?
It's interesting because we were talking about it, and it's like I have a 10-year-old that I'm homeschooling on my own at the moment, and it's my first time homeschooling. So how do I make something so complex simple? And then I have to like remind myself, no expectations, just go with the flow. Write it out with her, because she's going through her own emotional complexity, just that complex thought about, why do I have to be home, and why can't I go to school, and why this and why that,
why homework,
and it's just, what you're talking about. It's like I'm living it at the moment. How do I make things more simple, in such a complex situation at the moment?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I saw something this morning that said, education needs to change a lot. And we're now in this situation where the complex conditions out there are forcing you to change it. But the way she was talking about teaching students to be themselves, I mean, that's the theme of turning everything around. So the complex setup we've got in education, actually, maybe it could be very simple in changing it. But as, we're talking about, there's good sides and bad sides of everything. So, Tammy, what do you think?
When you first posed this, I wrote this down, and it kind of ties into what a lot of people have said. Simplicity is the essence of complexity. The common collective connecting points of our humanity, hopes, desires, and need to be seen, heard, and understood. Be comfortable in the in-between, because that's where we're able to connect the dots and transition from, I want to go back to normal, to where normal wasn't working, to what's next.
Yes. And do we think that, this common fact out there that 85% of the world is disengaged and not wanting to look forward, is that their resistance to creating a very simple straight line would in fact be the truth?
And instead of imagining and trying to manifest that imagination, even if it's not exactly what they think it is, but being open to what unfolds and to what opportunities are there that they can't even see, because we're so, not everyone, but so many people are so connected to, I want normal back. Normal wasn't working. That's why this disruption happened on so many levels. It had to literally stop everyone in their tracks on every level.
Yes.
All over the world.
And in fact, I mean, I know somebody else referenced that. I find, although there's a lot of complexity in my life, in many ways, living is simpler because we don't go out so much, or just to the supermarket, so we're not using petrol. It's like there's lots of things that have created simplicity around this situation. So Nadia, what's your thought there in California?
Well, my thoughts are in the concrete. We're talking about abstract, like you mentioned at the beginning, the three things: the judgment, to avoid in magical conversation. There's the avoiding judgment. I'm going to bring a concrete example of what I'm struggling with, and it puts everything into perspective of all has been discussed here. My son's girlfriend, I just discovered that there's a pack of cannabis that was in the trash. So this is the new era. Cannabis is now legal. Well, where I come from and how I grew up, that was illegal. And so I have a lot of judgment around this thing. And so now just to take it a little bit away from my personal life and bring it into the work. Let's say I own a corporation, and then I found out my employee is doing drugs, you know. So how do I handle that? So do I become the moose and just ignore it? You know, like, do I just mind my own business and do my own thing and not worry about other person? Or do I bring the complexity of all what it means? Okay, so what makes that person wanting to do that? What other habits will be created from this, and how far does that involve me, and where do I draw the line that it's okay with me and not? So this becomes very complex. And how do I bring it to simplicity without judgment when I already have lots of judgment about it? So then it brings me back to contemplation. Kate said contemplation, which is exactly what I need to do. How much do I want to bring in me? And so there's never a one answer fit all, because every situation forces to having a talk with I have to have my own personal dialogue with myself, and why is it affecting me? And then how do I bring it out in this world? And because it's not about to stop, because the natural movement, I've made a lot of noise that it was good and safe and healthy, and then you have the cannabis that comes and says, oh, but it's natural, and then of course kids wants to try things, so we can't deny them their experiences. So
and it's an interesting one. So it's almost like the complexity of the value judgment around certain things that are changing. So whether cannabis is good or not good, I mean, in some days it's been illegal, and this could be true of lots of subject matter where, you know, things have been illegal at one point and now are legal. How free do we choose to hold our moral compass, I suppose? So that is a choice point, because we've all got different personalities and different values. And there is always, I say no judgment, but there always is our own field of values, which might differ to other people's values. Gerard, we haven't heard from you yet. What's your thoughts? And welcome, James and Linda.
Hey, hello, everyone. I'm Gerald Charles here. You know, as I think about complexity and simplicity, I can talk about myself. Right before COVID-19, I had a very complex life. I run a major, I was senior manager for a P.F. Chang restaurant, which means I work 50 hours a week, in charge of 100 employees, and I was busy, have a lot going on. But since I have left that position, and my life have become really, really simple. I work from home, I do consultant work, and I'm thinking, you know, I wake up every day thinking it doesn't really feel real just by not having that stress. You know, I just don't really feel like myself, because I'm used to, you know, out networking, working, employees, dealing with problems, and I kind of like it that way. Okay, so sometime in life, I think it's important, as busy as we are, just kind of taking a pause. I think we can enjoy life a lot better. So my life has become a lot more simple, and whether we like it or not, I know with COVID-19, it made some of us life very complex, but I think for some people, it have made our life very simple. So that's what have happened to me.
And I think that's why I was showing it. Life in relative terms has become quite simple. There's less moving parts in one sense, and then more moving parts in another. Your thoughts, Linda, as a creative designer?
Well, I think a lot of the a lot of people are scared. There's a lot of fear factor, and so that makes things more complex. But I think it's not that our lives are becoming more, I think that you actually have to just push through the complexity and focus on simple applications to get through it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, okay, I got to do this, and this is all this, but I guess the problems are still complex, but now we could actually take a more simple way of doing it, which is basically just pushing yourself to push through it. I mean, that's, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but
whatever we say is correct. I mean, I think we're seeing that simplicity and complexity sit together, and they can be bad for us and they can be good for us, but we have to address both of them. And it was something I think you said to me, Scott, the other day was, you know, I said, what's the difference between simplicity and complexity? And you said it's about observation. And observation is one of the principles of entrepreneurship. It's like, what do we observe in the moment and how do we react? Is it instinctively, I don't like that, there's too much stress, or I'm going to go and sit on a mountain and just chill out?
You know what, actually, I got my thoughts together now. Sorry. Let me go back. So I think dealing with these complex issues now is, I know personally, I've had to recalibrate on what makes me happy. And that is something that I think is huge for so many people, where they've gone through survival skills, but now it's kind of recreating your life and understanding what makes us tick. So that's where I think, that's how I define your simplicity, because when I define my own life and I go through, you know, kind of redefining my career and all that kind of stuff, it's, I mean, you have to kind of dig deep in a simple way on, you know, who we are. I mean, that's a huge question. A lot of us don't even know who we are. We, you know, but understanding what we like, and we change all the time. I mean, we're one person one season, we're one person, but the essence, our essence, I mean, that's another discussion, but that's super, that's a simplicity, you know,
Yes.
us in a simple way, understanding.
Yeah, so it's about the challenge for us all is, you know, who we are, well, being who we are, but then the understanding of how that connects with everybody else, the communication, the clarity, and then, you know, we mentioned the unity and coming together.
Yeah, because, but hold on, because I don't think that you can like have a conversation with somebody without them wanting to be able to receive that. So if they, you know what I mean, like they have to wanna, right? Because my husband and I, we go back and forth and it's like, they don't want to do it. They don't want to, you know, I mean, so if they have that guard up, so somehow just making it in a conversational way that's simple for them to like, it's almost reading somebody in a way. And it's like reading their character and making it in simple form for them to understand a complex situation. That's, I guess that's how I would address it.
I do, yeah. So, Angel, I know you're, and James, you come in late here, but what's your thoughts, Angel, on how we deal with complexity and simplicity in partnership?
Thank you. Yes, sorry, I had a pre-scheduled meeting before this one, but so one of my favorite you know, taglines is, you know, taking perfect action now. Okay, so when I'm facing, you know, a complex situation, typically I try to pick what my intuition tells me to do first. I analyze what I have to do. I put it through the filter of that intuition, which tells me, okay, so if I start doing that, I think I'm going to make a lot of progress. I think I'm going to feel well. Someone just said that right now, and Cami was saying yes when it was nodding all the time. So I think it's extremely important to start, you know, navigating that complexity in one direction. And I think that then you start seeing other options and other possibilities that allow you to deal with the rest of the complexity. That's how I deal with it. Because obviously the easy thing is to spend a lot of time on, you know, analyzing and, you know, what can happen if, what if. But I try to start building something out of a lot of like a massive kind of action and energy onto that situation.
So that's lovely. That's mentioning intuition, which we haven't touched on, but I like that. And also the idea of navigating. It's like, you know, with a sea. As a sailor, I've been on rough seas where it suddenly will change and you've got to navigate and use your intuition. What do you think, Jim, about intuition and simplicity and complexity?
I didn't join this meeting to go to school.
Okay, you don't have to.
You know, that's like ninth grade being asked by my geometry teacher, Jim, why don't you put problem number 7 on the board?
Okay, well, we've just been talking about the, you know, that really simplicity and complexity are in there together for forever, and that we've got to find ways through it. But I like the idea of using our intuition, something I want to aim to do more. And I suppose that's what I do when I set these kind of meetings up, because I just use my intuition and then go with the flow. So we haven't heard from Lloyd. I don't know whether you're there, Lloyd. We haven't seen you're on the camera, but have you got any words for us? Are you there, Lloyd?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry, my camera doesn't work. I've been juggling from Zoom to Teams to different platforms here. What I like about the discussion is really about the context in which, you know, complexity, simplicity, at least this paradigm would fit. Depending on if you're looking from a business perspective, coming back to Knut's comments around building a global business network, or a tool basically that is very complex and trying to simplify it, at least on the messaging, you know, the laws of 3, the laws of 5, what are your competitive advantage, and you know, the techniques around positioning around a product is very similar to, I mean, to the simple complex discussion that we are having today. How do we simplify the message? How do we make it palpable for an audience that might not be savvy enough to understand the intricacy of how it's being built? Now, I'm talking about context because this is mostly on the business side, but on the personal side, coming back, I think, to Angela's comments around reading a book, right? You cannot simplify the book just by a title and having just 3 words to explain the book. I mean, we are now having movies that are trying to put together in an hour and a half. You do that, right? How do you simplify the message so that it's, you know, there's a moral, there's a story, there's, you know, appeal to the story that will reach so many viewers and potential, you know, readers afterwards. So I think it just depends on what is your target, who are you trying to reach? I mean, in a marketing or business perspective, but also from a personal matter, I think, you know, there's a requirement of commitment to understand the complexity of a problem. When reading a book and spending so many hours into that complex, you know, world, I'm talking about a book, but it could mean anything, right? Passion or something in the brain that comes back to, okay, what is my, you know, my rationale to do that? What is my passion? What is my, you know, my feeling? Something a little bit more that will then attract the curiosity of one reading that, right? Or one going through the steps of understanding the complexity. I think this world is in need of understanding the complexity rather than trying to simplify all the time. And I think the brain makes it much easier afterwards than to simplify the message.
So we need to simplify the message, but hold on to the complexity.
That's very important, yeah.
Rebecca, thank you, Lloyd. That everything is very insightful. Rebecca, you rose your hand.
JB did.
Oh,
I did. I just like to contribute to this conversation. I definitely understand everyone has a different perspective, and always, how do we want to live? Do we want to live in a simplistic life or a complex life? But we need both. So like a journey we've been on is seeking, say, tools. So we joined a certain program, and I've been getting a hold of your guys' personality to understand where you guys are coming from. So this,
oh yes.
the tool has made it easy for me to understand you and to kind of keep up with this conversation, because you guys are speaking at a personality that's not my primary, so it makes me feel lost initially. So that brings me up to speed. And of course, as we seek out truth, one of them being a gentleman named Matthias De Stefano, who has a series on Gaia explaining about the different levels of the dimensions, chakras, and how complexity and simplicity have to be present in order for it to exist. Without one or the other, then we would be back to our higher source and nothing would be going on. So we come to this world and it's just got to a point where it's too complex, where obviously the reset, this aspect of Corona and everything shutting down, to reset, to remind us to the other aspect that we're missing, whether we need simplicity or whether we need more complexity in our life. So that is, there's a mini,
go ahead. Squirrel.
Squirrel, yes. Which is my aspect of personality, to be easy to accept others, is just see them through this lens of what personality are they in and how are they trying to achieve personal or business connection, and to how do you make it more simple? How do you make it more, to be, like someone mentioned, depends on where they at and where they're trying to go.
Yes. And that's everything for me is about, firstly, understanding yourself. Secondly, tuning into somebody else who's in your company of several people, and then understanding the unity of the whole. And not everybody is going to be in your cycle of intention. Some people may come into your life, you know, they're classic for a reason, for a season, etc. But it's the energy of flow. So it's, I would say it's focus, flow, and flourish. And it's all about flexibility, but we need some stability as well. So the conversation has been full of amazing words. I've been writing down some of the words, and I don't know whether you've all observed that there are some very individual words that only got used by certain people. And I think that shows the variety of difference that we have, even when we're all enlightened. Does that make sense? It's like, we don't, even when we're enlightened, as I would believe we all are, and we're at that, going towards that higher level, we still are very, very different. And for me, it's like, how do we create, when Georgina started at the beginning, you know, how do we create that simple message? Like for me, with Magical Conversations, I would say, you know, it's without judgment, anger, and coercion. Becomes a simple message. What does it mean? In reality, in application, it could be means loads of things. How do we understand the masculine and feminine? How do we understand ourselves as men and women? How do we understand different generations, different sexual orientations, different religions, different, all the differences? And I always talk about valuing difference. And we have only another 5 minutes to go, but is there anybody who has, you know, a bite size of wisdom that they want to say now?
I'll go quickly if that's all right.
Oh yeah, Scott, and then Georgina. Scott.
I've really enjoyed today, and I want to thank everybody, because I've taken a lot of different notes about different things. But I think one of the things that I've noticed inside of creating simplicity, because it's so complex, you actually have to create safety in order to go into a complex situation. I know myself, I have a lot of different conversations with on varying topics, and you need to get an understanding. But one of the things that Pauline did here first was set the boundaries for the conversation, and the boundaries for anything will allow as a safety net of trust so that we can actually take on complex situations. So I've really enjoyed that, but something I picked up from Knut was creativity, because creativity allows us to sit and actually come up with simple solutions. If you look at all the top brands, they've gone in with all these complex ideas. Like it takes a lot of time to build a pair of shoes, but you know, all different avenues. But the message for Nike is just do it. It's very simple. It's very effective. So if we can take that complexity and put it into a language we all understand, it's a beautiful thing. So, yeah. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Scott. And I love that. It's like, you know, Coca-Cola, we know what the message is. It's very simple. Nike, we know what the message is. Georgina, and then we'll come to Kate.
Yeah, I think that to make something simple, we've got to first understand its component parts. And it's like that picture that you shared with lots of, you know, bars going in all sorts of different directions. There's a science and a logic behind that structure. And if we understand the component parts, the building blocks, then we can understand how they interlock together. And it doesn't matter whether you visualize it in terms of Lego or geodesic domes or buildings or collections of balloons or whatever. It's like understanding the way that things come together makes it easier it creates a map, if you like, in being able to navigate between the different elements and different component parts. And I feel that you mentioned intuition earlier, that, you know, actually we need a very good balance between the logic and process and intuition and creativity, so that you actually be able to, you know, tap into the physical elements, but you can tap into the esoteric elements. And as much as that takes practice to get to be able to read a situation and intuit your way to, you know, saying the right thing in the next instance or taking the next step, it acts as a part of your toolkit, if you like, to be able to understand, to be able to manage complexity. They're very simple component parts which enable us to actually do really complex things. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. And I suppose it's like we see a car and it drives, and we don't need to know all the complex pieces inside it. We just, you know, we know that's a car and it goes, and when it goes wrong, we have to deal with the complexity. Thank you, Georgina. Kate, you wanted to say something. And before you do, I'm just going to say, put your details in the chat if you would like to connect with anybody on here so that everybody knows who you are. And I will be sending you the recording. But Kate, a quick word there.
I'll try and be really quick. So I think somebody said, I'd like to respond to what Georgina just said, which referred to what you and someone else were saying about intuition. So there are 4 states that get to, you know, full kind of enlightenment. It starts instinct, and then we have intellect, which in some respects is where I would, and I don't like labels, but when you talked about logic and all of that sort of stuff, I'd dump it there. Then you have intuition, and then you get illumination. And as, I think it was Einstein, but it's purported to have said, you know, the mind's the servant, the intuition is the gift. And sadly, in this world, we've forgotten the gift and overused the servant. And to qualify that, I would say we're in the 5th root race at the moment, which may mean something to people, it may not. But essentially, it's the Aryan one, which is the mental. So that's why we have this fixation with the mental. And the final point is, somebody I think also said this, or it triggered this thought in me, was less is more. So this week has been an amazing conversation, but it feels like it's only just started. And so we've fallen into the trap of how many people can we get in a room because it looks better if there's lots of us, instead of quality is better than quantity. And that's not to say, you know, a comment on anybody being here, because there's been some amazing insights, but to have those Sartori moments, perhaps if we had a few and we could go deeper, we'd get even more.
Well, thank you, Kate. And because we've come to the top of the hour, it is only the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. But I think what I love is whoever's meant to be here turns up. That's what I always feel. And that the words that we share, which is now recorded, and you can take the recording and listen to it again, and I'll take the chat as well. This is only the start of a complex conversation to simplify the world, okay? And one of the things that I am passionate about is men and women understanding each other, as you know, and the feminine and masculine and how it comes together. So on Monday, the 21st, which is only next Monday, I'm running a men-only session. I know I'm female and I will be there, but it will be men only. And on the 28th, I will have the same, but with women only. And I know some of you have signed up already, but in order to sometimes hone down deeply, and so we can then come back together again and compare the commentary that we develop, that's the way we will go forward. So this is the first step in our future. Remember, it's create our future together. We want to create ecosystems that Knut's talking about in the Global Renaissance Society. I hope you put the link in the chat, Knut. And please look at that. Any others? Georgina is creating communities that we're talking about so many different things. Angel and I often talk about going trouncing the boardroom, go make the boardroom laugh and joke. And Jim and I are educating the world with entrepreneurology and making sure that everybody brings imagination, knowledge, experience and imagination together. You're all incredibly gifted and wise people, and I am honored that you are here. Thank you, Lloyd and Gerard, for coming. I can't see you on screen. I need to take a picture. I don't know whether, oh, Lloyd, you haven't got the camera, but Nadia, could you take a screenshot for me? Are you able to? I know that I sometimes can't do it on this computer. But I really, if you haven't signed up for one of the individual sessions, I would really appreciate, let me just take a picture. Oh, smile. Smile at the camera, Brian. Thank you. If you haven't signed up for the male or female one, please do. I really value your views. For me, the complexity of how we get on as human beings and valuing the kaleidoscope of human differences is one of the most beautiful, amazing and challenging situations we have in the world. But I believe if we create life at work and we really ensure that we also bring some fun back into the world of work as well, I think that would be good. So I really appreciate you coming and staying for this hour. And there will be another conversation of Create Our Future Together in the mid-October, after which we will have done the men's and the females group, and therefore we'll have some data from that. And also I'm running a conversation session in Kuala Lumpur, though I'm not flying there, on the 2nd of October. So that will be exciting as well, because that's also with men and women in the room, and it's about conversation. So my appreciation to you all and my gratitude. Thank you.
Pauline. Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Pauline. Great to be here.
I'm so appreciate all of you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
y'all. Cheers.
Grazie. Arrivederci.